So about 6 months ago, I was in Istanbul for a few days, making pilgrimage, as I like to think it. And I was there in that magnificent structure called the Hagia Sophia. There was the single largest building, other than the pyramids, for over 1,000 years. A Christian church that became a mosque. And you can still see mosaics from its Christian period. It's an enormous building. Think of a cross between the Colosseum and St. Peter's. It's massive like the Colosseum and yet pious like St. Peter. And that's not to give you a sense of what it looks like, but how it feels. It's an enormous structure, a testimony to the triumph of the Christian church. As I'm walking through it, amazed, astonished, a strange thought came to me. Would Jesus have anything to do with a place like this? And realized that the answer was clear. No, would not. None of the prophets had much respect for giant structures, buildings. In fact, they were a bit contemptuous of them. I say this because it bears upon the cleansing of the temple action that comes on the heels of the Palm Sunday experience. This was a man who was willing to get into some very serious trouble. He went to the epicenter of institutional Judaism and literally broke up the place, committed sacrilege left and right, took on a terrible crime. So terrible, in fact, that the officials worked very hard and very successfully to have him arrested and put away, not only because he did all that, but because people were impressed with it and were thinking of doing it themselves. And we should be alert that when rabble-rousers rouse the rabble, bad things can happen. Destruction is very much a part of Jesus' ministry. It's also very much a part of the Passover story. You remember all those plagues. They're called plagues for a reason. They're bad. Awful things happen. Darkness, lice, boils, blood instead of water, and of course the slaying of the firstborn. The story is full of destruction and ultimately death and destruction. Of course, in retrospect, we're okay with that. Israel was on the right side of that story, right? Egypt is bad, Moses is good, Jesus is good, the Sanhedrin is bad, so it's okay. But my point here is that we forget that even at its best, religion destroys. And sometimes when it's at its very best, it is destroying things we know and love, be they temples or families. Elsewhere in the Christian gospel, Jesus says that he has come not to bring peace, but a sword, to set brother against brother and family against family. Isaiah, whose words are very much a part of Jesus' mouth as he comes in, saying, "This shall be a house of prayer for all people," predicted time and again the destruction of institutions because they were corrupt, but the destruction nonetheless. And it turned out he was right. Ultimately, the kingdom of Judah fell, and the people were carried into Babylon, into a terrible exile. Of course, revolutionary ideas in religion are both literal and symbolic. We would not feel at all comfortable if Moses were to come in here and say, "Let my fountain streeters go." We would not feel at all comfortable if Jesus walked in here and started knocking the chairs around and telling us not to put up tables in the social hall. We would say, where does this fellow come off telling us what to be like? We have to be alert to the fact that we have all made our compromises. Revolutionary ideas in religion are hard to take. So I'm going to talk about the symbolic value because talking about the literal value is too disturbing. But I'll leave that disturbing element on the table for you. I'll let you remember that if Jesus were to come to town, you would not find him either at St. Andrew's or at LaGrave Avenue or at Fountain Street Church. My guess would be you'd find him somewhere on South Division Street on a street corner, smoking a cigarette and talking to someone who has a lot less than everyone in this room. I'm going to leave that on the corner because I'm going to talk about destruction at the spiritual level. That every act of creation, and remember if you were here a couple of weeks ago, I said that creating is what we are here to do as human beings, to create in the sense with each other the world in which we live, to create institutions, ideas, civilizations. That's our task, to create. That every act of creation entails an act of destruction. Unlike the fabled God of the Old Testament, we do not create out of nothing. Everything we create from something, and as Joseph Schumpeter told us economically, every act of creation calls for an act of creative destruction as well. Physics and biology are full of this. They make everything from what is around, from the elements, from energy. Nothing that exists now came from nothing. It all came from something. Whenever we talk about the problems with water on the planet, it isn't that there isn't enough water, it's just in the wrong places. Because the water really doesn't go anywhere. It simply moves from ice to salt to fresh into the air. There will always be the same amount of water on the planet there is now. Whenever we talk about other things, we have to remember that everything that is destroyed is put back together in another form. The essential spiritual vocation of our adult lives to continue creation requires us to destroy things as we go.